So now, chat, after my review for Oppenheimer, I can finally go ahead and rank all of Christopher Nolan's films. I've seen his entire filmography, starting all the way back in 1998 with Following, and all the way up to now with 2023's Oppenheimer, chat. I've seen all these movies. Now, again, I haven't, maybe some of these movies I haven't seen in a few years, maybe even a decade, but I have seen them, chat. And I have created a personal list going from worst all the way to best, chat. And there's a lot of Christopher Nolan movies I truly love that I think are fantastic. I think you can argue are some of the best movies of the 21st century. And there's other films which I personally found disappointing. That didn't work. May work for you. You might love them. They might be in your top 5. Hell, some of them might even be number 1. But this is just my personal ranking. And again, of course, we can agree to disagree. But we're going to go ahead and get started, chat. And I have to admit, for this first one, I almost didn't include it. I almost didn't include it for a lot of reasons. But we're going to go ahead and start with number 12, Following. Again, for those that don't know, Following, the film focuses on a struggling writer who follows numerous strangers around the streets of London in order to draw inspiration for his works, and he mistakenly begins to follow a man with ties to dangerous criminal activity. Now listen, the reason why I didn't include this, I'll say this. I think it has a great premise and a great idea for a story, but the movie, in terms of how it's shot, how it's edited, how it's lit, how in a lot of cases how it's acted, it just feels like a student film, honestly. I know it had some type of theatrical release, festivals. I know it's on Blu-ray. You can buy it and you can watch it on YouTube, all that stuff, YouTube and Amazon stuff. It's Christopher Nolan still finding his voice as a filmmaker, and honing in on the sensibilities his filmmaking sensibilities that would define the rest of his career. And so I can kind of respect it. Okay, I see what you're trying to do here. It's just, but again, I don't mean this in even a mean way. It's just, there's aspects about that they come across very amateurish, right? But you can see the potential here. I think the idea is really interesting. This creepy guy just following people around, and and he sets up these rules for himself, and he follows certain people for however long he needs to, and he just follows the wrong person. It's a really cool idea. It's just the execution is the issue. I don't think it's very well executed. But, and again, I almost didn't include this. I almost said honorable mention. Let's just mention this. But if I had to rank it, it would be number 12. It would be the last one. I think I wouldn't even want to say it's the worst. You said it perfectly, Deadpool. It's baby's first movie. It's babyface Christopher Nolan's first movie, and I appreciate the effort. Now moving on. Moving on to number 11. At this point, I'm I can't defend that. I can't make excuses for this one. Number 11, chat, is Tenet. Now, for those that don't know, Tenet focuses on a secret agent, I think, who is forced to take a mission in order to prevent World War III, cataclysmic event, Armageddon, whatever, and must time travel and defy the laws of nature to accomplish his mission. Listen, as I said, during my Oppenheimer review, this is Nolan indulging in his worst sensibilities as a director. He's primarily focused on delivering elaborate, though practical, a lot of practical, action set pieces. But his storytelling, the characters, if you even want to call them characters, I don't think I would. I think I would call them props, honestly. The pacing and the sound mixing, I think, are atrocious in this movie. In regards to sound mixing, the sound mixing in this movie is now infamous. This should be held up as a template of what not to do when it comes. And the thing is, as a regular schmuck, I think even someone who loves film, we don't often think about sound mixing and sound editing. I think we just don't. I'll admit that, right? But this movie makes you aware, holy shit, sound mixing is incredibly important, because the sound mixing in this is terrible. You have so many loud noises. You have such a loud score that you cannot hear people speaking. And it's in scenes where they're talking to each other. I can't hear you. I can't hear the dialogue. Not that it matters, because most of the time they're talking about timey-wimey mumbo-jumbo bullshit, and there's no point. But still, it's just it's so weird. And then they have him come out and say, I did that on purpose because you don't need to hear him talk. It's what? That doesn't make any sense. It's far too long. And the characters aside, and listen, be positive. Robert Pattinson is the absolute best character in this movie. He's the only one that's not a prop, because unlike everyone else in that movie, he actually has a personality. He actually looks like he's having fun, and I liked him for that. I was like, oh, thank God he's here. I think the movie should have revolved around him. It should have been his movie. It should have been, just, let's focus on this guy, Because I'm sorry, Johnny V. Washington, who I've been very mixed on as an actor for a long time. He ain't his daddy. He ain't Denzel. That's for sure. But he's done stuff I like. I like him, Black Klansman, and he did that Netflix black and white movie. I forget. It escapes me at the moment. But here it's just like, can you act? I don't really know. But at least in the way in which Chris Nolan wrote his character, his character's name's he doesn't have a name. He's called the protagonist, which is weird. And that to me is like artsy fartsy film school stuff. It's like, oh, my character doesn't have a name. He's a character of characters. He's the common character we've seen across all sorts of genres. That's why I call him the protagonist. I was like, get out of here. That stuff annoys me. And it's outside of some really cool imaginative action set pieces, which there are in this movie, and Robert Pattinson, I do not like any. I never want to watch this movie again. I have no interest in seeing it again. I really have no interest in rewatching certain scenes. It's like, no, this is by far, like, again, I don't really count following. This is by far his worst movie, and it made me sad because I'm like, this is what it's going to be from now on. Thankfully, it's not. Thankfully, it's not, going to be this way for every Christopher Nolan film from now on, thanks to Oppenheimer. But I was like, nope, no, thank you. No, thank you, Tenet. Get out of here. You suck. Moving on from Tenet, got to bring up Dunkirk, chap. Dunkirk. Man, for this film, it's an ensemble film that covers the evacuation of British, French, Belgian, Dutch, and other Allied troops on the beaches of Dunkirk in 1940. I think May 1940, right? I think they mentioned in the film. And as they were being attacked by numerous German forces. Now, listen, I'll say this. This is a beautiful looking movie. Love the cinematography. And again, it's focusing on like a harrowing event, during World War II. The problem is this movie had no emotional impact on me whatsoever. And again, it's because of its flat and uninteresting characters. I couldn't tell you the name of any of these people in this movie. I couldn't even tell you like a scene where I felt like, and again, these characters are under like the worst circumstances ever. It's terrifying. I'm like, I just don't really care, because even like how he's writing them, how he's directing them, they don't even feel like real people in this movie. It's weird. Again, they are the very definition of props in a film that is all about the spectacle and the cinematography, and look how I put this scene together and that scene together. Oh yeah, and then there's the meatbags, the humans. They're in this too, and I was just like, okay, but I have no emotional chat. The other positive thing I'll say about this movie, to be kind, very well paced. It is short. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. I was like, oh my God, it's kind of refreshing coming from Christopher Nolan, which I think you can definitely lob at him that some of his movies are too long, certainly in the latter half of his career. So even though I think it's beautiful, I think it's very well paced, I do not like these characters. I really, really they just exist. They're just there. They're props. They're props, which I think that has plagued several of Nolan's films. There are scenes in here because even today I went back and I was like, maybe we watch some of these sequences, and I was watching them and I was like, this is technically well put together, but I don't know, even their reactions, like even when you get like Tom Hardy in here, he's just like, fine as plain. I was like, okay. It's like, let's get a little emotion. It's none. It's just cold. It's a very cold movie. Very austere movie. Moving on from Dunkirk, and I was debating, this might have been the 10th slot, I wasn't sure. But number nine for me, Chad, is the Dark Knight Rises. Which again, for those that don't know, it's the Return of the League of Shadows, led by the mysterious masked figure known only as Bane, who forces Batman to come out of retirement, in which he tries to save the city, while also crossing paths with a burglar known as Catwoman. And, as I said during my review for Oppenheimer, and I've talked about this film for years, chat. I think it's a disappointing conclusion that has good performances from Christian Bale and Gary Oldman and Anne Hathaway and Michael Caine and maybe some others. But I think it really suffers. It has a lackluster villain in Bane. a really uninspired, confusing story, and just kind of inexplicable, just odd plot holes. I mean, look, every movie's gonna have some plot holes, but like you could drive, semi trucks through the plot holes in this movie. I'm trying to figure out like how do we get from point A to point, like what? It's just weird. It's really weird. And again, compared to his other two Batman movies, which I think you make an argument are some of the best superhero films of all time, just some of the best films of the 2000s. It feels like there was no passion behind this movie. After The Dark Knight, we had so many great ideas. And I know that this was not the original film he wanted to make. I know that he wanted to use the Joker again. I know that he wanted to have Heath Ledger, but sadly, because of Heath Ledger's tragic passing, that didn't come to be. And I don't know, his interpretation of Bane didn't sit well with me. He completely whitewashed him. I think this was kind of the start of Tom Hardy as an actor just being kind of ridiculous. Like this film's biggest contribution to pop culture is the Bane voice. Oh, Batman! It's like, and that's been parodied in the Lego Batman movie. It's like that's Bane's voice in the Harley Quinn show. It's like, I'll be this credit card's reckoning. It's like, I hate you, Todd. It's Bane, not Bane. It's like, that's it. That's what this movie contributed, to it. And it has some good performances. I like Michael Caine. And he's so, oh, heard ya cross. I go do that always. Like that scene when he's telling Bruce, like, don't do this, then you're gonna kill yourself. I won't be a part of that. I won't be a part of that. Like, I like that. That was like, oh my God, I got water watching the movie. That was really good. I felt the history between them and the love they have for each other. But it just has a lot of dumb stuff in it that just does not work. It's like every police officer in Gotham went into the sewers. Every single one? Really? I guess aside from like Gary Oldman and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It was kind of like a weird character, It was like, you're Robin. You're going to be Robin. You're going to be the next Batman. I don't know. Yeah. So aside from some good things and some cool action sequences, yeah, I don't really care for this movie. And listen, I'll admit, I'll definitely admit, when I first saw this movie, I was like, no, it's good. It's good. It's good. No, it's very, it's not as good as Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, but it's a good movie. And it wasn't until I saw the next film on this list, I went, I'm lying. I'm lying to myself. And I do not like The Dark Knight Rises. I really do not. I really do not. But you know what? I like a little bit better than The Dark Knight Rises, Jim. I'm telling you right now, the movie I like a little bit better is Interstellar. And again, the plot of this film, it's like Earth is dying and soon to be kind of devoid of natural resources. A team of astronauts led by Matthew McConaughey explore the cosmos for habitable worlds for humanity, which I think is a great premise. And this was during the McConaissance chat. This was after McConaughey was appeared in things like Dallas Buyers Club won the Oscar and The Wolf of Wall Street and Bernie. I mean, he was just like, oh yeah, Matthew McConaughey, partner of Christopher Nolan. Like, here we go. Hey, he's moving on from the superheroes. Cool. That sounds great. Let's see who he's got. It's like, oh, Christopher Nolan, space, so much space. Got to see it all. Love it. And listen, I'll say this to be very positive at the top. I think this film is anchored by a very passionate performance by Matthew McConaughey. I think he's great in this movie. Like, I went back today and I actually rewatched some of his scenes in the film, even early on, but certainly like that, everyone knows that sequence in which he's, because Nolan loves playing with time. He's obsessed with it. But when he goes to that planet and like the time slows down on that planet, but like in when you're off the planet, then time is like a lot faster. And it was like 20 years. And he's watching all these videos that his now adult kids have sent him. And he's missed all that stuff. And he's breaking down. Murph! And all that. It's like that works for me. He's amazing. He is, again, like I said, he's the anchor of the movie. He's the character I'm most invested in this film. And it has some stellar special effects. It's a beautiful looking movie. No doubt about it. All that stuff and the space station, the ships and all that, and the planets, really cool. It's scary. It's very scary. The things I dislike about it, though, I think it has kind of an uninteresting cast of supporting characters that I just did not care about at all. It's in some cases kind of just goofy characters. Like Matt Damon, he's in the movie. It's like Matt Damon's in the movie, which was a huge. I remember seeing the film and watching it, and the audience went, "It's Matt Damon." No one knew he was in. I didn't know he was in the movie. I had no idea. It's like, that's Matt Damon in the film. And this is a spoiler. He's a bad guy. The thing is that's so amusing is his name is Dr. Man. Man is the true villain. It feels, again, it's this weird kind of like film student, like, that's the name of my villain, Man. And I'm like, okay. I did not, like, I think the first third of this movie is probably the best part. But then when we get into like, when we get to Matt Damon, and then, I'm sorry, but the final third I think is terrible. The whole I don't like it. I don't like it in many movies where the answer to humanity's destruction or it's like this algorithm is the algorithm for love. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, apparently, yeah, it's a mathematical formula. We can build space stations with love. That's nice. It's like, get out of here. That's ridiculous. And he goes back and he sees Murph. He's like, Murph, you're old now. She is indeed old, Chad. She's old. She's a grandma, great grandma and stuff. And he goes out. Hey, I like the robot. I forgot. I other than Matthew McConaughey, that robot, that weird, he looks like he's like he's like a Tetris robot. He's great. I don't know what the hell his name was, but I love Tetris Robot. He was pretty cool. And I liked him when he was hanging out with Matthew McConaughey and they were bonding. They actually have some, it's Tars. Is that his name? Tars? I would call him Tetris. He's pretty good. I like that. Again, it's the humanity. It's that humanity in the movie with Matthew McConaughey, all represented in him and that robot, funny enough. But like all the other supporting characters and again, not Matt Damon's fault. It's what's written for him. And I like the look at the planets. They were really just alien, creepy, and just kind of scary. That was cool. But man, that third act, it really ruined it for me. And also, I think it has pacing issues too. Jeff. But I know a lot of people love Interstellar. I know a lot of Interstellar was like in their top 3, but for me, yeah, dialing back humor to 75%. Yeah, see, that was good. I did like that. I did like that quite a bit. And then moving on, chat. Well, it's the most recent Nolan film, and I've already talked about this a lot, but of course it's Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is my number 7, which again, during World War II, good old Bobby Oppenheimer, pointed to work and lead the top secret Manhattan Project, in which him and many scientists spend years developing and testing the atomic bomb, and the film also explores, Oppenheimer's, life before and after the creation of the bomb and its effect on his public and personal life. And, as I said, this is a return to a more intimate and well-developed lead and supporting characters for a Christopher Nolan film, right? It's something I was really, really happy about. Oh, yeah, that's what they call him. The film succeeds, I think, in showcasing the development of the atomic bomb. They make that very interesting and its effect on just the, the conscience of its creators, especially, good old Bobby Oppenheimer. But like I said in my review, I think it has some pacing issues, especially in the last third. I think it has unwritten female characters, kind of all represented in Florence Pugh. And it has, in my opinion, one of the worst scenes of Nolan's film career, which I don't want to spoil it here, but it revolves around the quote, that quote from the ancient Hindu scripture, Destroyer of Worlds. I was like, why did you do this? But there's a lot that works about this movie. It has some incredible performances that I'm sure, even after this recording, after this stream, they're going to eventually be nominated for numerous awards. Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., the rest of the supporting cast is Benny Safdie, Jack Quaid, everyone. There's so many. There's a lot. Josh Peck. There's so many actors in this. I would be here all night just going over them, but they all do a really solid job. And I do think this is more of a return to form to Nolan. The things I like about him as a filmmaker, and I hope he continues to delve more into that again, be more character-based. Thank you very much. And then we're getting to the film now. All these movies after this one, because I think this movie is very good. I really like this movie. I can't say I loved Oppenheimer, but I thought this was very good, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. These next 6 films, I would say I think are great, and I would say like I even love these movies. And starting with number 6, chat, which is Insomnia. Now, for those that don't know, it's a remake, but it follows a veteran police officer, played by Al Pacino, who is sent to a small Alaskan town to investigate a murder of a teenage girl. And he gets into like a cat and mouse game with the primary suspect, played by Rob Williams, while dealing with insomnia and an extremely guilty conscience over a heinous act he previously committed in the movie. And for me, again, I really like the character-focused Christopher Nolan movies. This has some just two powerhouse performances from Al Pacino and Robin Williams. And this is like during Robin Williams' career where he was like, I mean, not that he did many dramas in the 80s and the 90s and things, but this is like that weird like 2 years where he just did these really dark thrillers where I forget if it was before or after Insomnia. He also did a movie called 1 Hour Photo, which is really good and super underrated. And then he also did this movie. And I don't know, just I never would have thought yet, like seeing Al Pacino and Robin Williams just bouncing off each other. It never would occur to me like, yeah, put them together in a movie. But when they are in it, it's like, this is great. I love their dynamic. And I think it's a solid psychological mystery and thriller. I do think this movie has a bit of a backlash. I probably like it more than most people because I know that there is it's an American remake, right? Of a film from one of the Scandinavian countries, I think. I forget at the top of my head. But I really love it. I think it's been a while since I've seen it, but I just remember going, like, God, this is so good. I was captivated watching these two guys just constantly butt heads, and also Al Pacino just like he's keeping like a really dark, messed up secret, and it's affecting his performance as a police officer, and I like that. It's a lot of great tension. And that's something I also want to talk about with Nolan in general. Just like, he's really good. I don't know if he's the master of creating tension right now. I still would say, like, Quentin Tarantino, to me, like, I think you can say what you will about many of his movies, but I feel like in terms of working living directors, he's the best when it comes to creating tension, especially through dialogue. But then I think you can bring into the conversation like Christopher Nolan. He's very good at creating tension, and it's certainly the case with this movie, with Insomnia. But moving on, now we're getting to my top 5 chat. And number 5 is Inception, where, again, this focuses on a thief played by Leonardo DiCaprio, named Cobb, funny enough, which is the name of one of the characters from Following, which I thought he's kind of referencing his own work. And who's a criminal and a thief. But focuses on a thief named Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who steals basically corporate secrets through the use of this dream sharing manipulation technology, and is given an interesting task where he's not stealing something, he's actually putting something in someone's mind. He's planting an idea in the mind of the CEO for this company, for this rival company owned by Ken Watanabe. But he has like this tragic past, and it's basically putting him and all of his coworkers, all of his associates in danger as they're going on this mission into the mind of this individual. And this movie was a turning point in his career, because I do like the characters. I do like performance. I think DiCaprio is great. I think Ken Watanabe is great. Cillian Murphy's very good. Elliot Page, really good. And this is kind of my introduction to like Tom Hardy too. I really liked him. He was like a charm to him, right? I really like that. Very likable, despite the fact that they're all kind of criminals and scumbags. It's funny to think about this. Like, they're really actually doing like a really bad thing in the movie when you think about it. But I kind of like that. But we just get some really cool, imaginative like sequences. It's like, yes, this is the film that Christopher Nolan definitely uses CGI in it, and I think the CGI looks really good. But then he just uses these cool practical effects. Like, I love the fight scene with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the room is like shifting and turning. Like, all that just looks so great. I liked this was a criticism against the movie, but they kind of explain in the film where it's like, well, this is a dream world. Why aren't there more crazy shit happening? Because when we have dreams, our dreams are nuts, right? But again, they explain in the movie that these guys are literally, they don't go into the minutia of like, this is how we manipulate the dreams. They tell you enough to the point where it's like, it's not confusing. Because I don't want to spend fucking 30 minutes just going over all this and just having a heap and helping of exposition. No, thank you. But what they do a good job of establishing that these guys create these dream worlds in which to operate in for the host, for the people that they're either stealing from, or in this case, implanting something. And so that's why the dreams look the way they do. All right, they're literally manipulating the dream, and I like that idea. I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. And I liked it, just this added element of like there's dreams within dreams within dreams. You got to go deeper in order to, but it gets more dangerous as you get deeper, right? Because then this is a world where people are aware of this dream technology, and they've put in safeguards in the people's minds, and it's like, wow, it's just really creative and cool, and you can get trapped in someone's mind shed, and your body just wastes away. And I was like, this is really interesting, and I really liked it. It was one of my favorite movies from 2010, and it was the last Christopher Nolan movie that I truly loved. Since the decade that we're in now and the previous decade. But I think it's great. I really love Inception. Moving on, number 4, chat. Number 4, which I think over time, there's people. I remember when this movie came out, and I don't think it was as loved as it is now. I think over time people have grown to love it. And that movie is The Prestige. The Prestige, it focuses on these 2 stage magicians, played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, in like 1890s London, and they kind of engage in this this battle to create like the ultimate magical act, the ultimate illusion, while pretty much just ruining each other's lives, while sacrificing everything that they have just to outwit each other, just to one up each other. And again, like, you have a cool mystery in this. You have some cool set pieces and sequences, and it delves into, like, you know, the stage magic of the late 1800s, you know, which is kind of like of the 19th century. That to me is like interesting, because I don't know anything about that kind of stuff, like outside like Houdini, right? And so I was like, oh, this is a cool new world I'm entering into. But again, it is anchored by these really good performances, you know, by everyone. And there's even some, like, there's people I forgot, because I haven't seen this movie in a while, and I was rewatching clips again today. I was like, oh my God, I forgot who was in it. Like, yeah, it's led by Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. But then you also have Michael Caine, you know, freaking collaborator of Christopher Nolan. You have David Bowie, who plays Nikola Tesla in this film. Tesla is a cool character in this movie, and using his technology for magical acts. Andy Serkis is in this. Like, all of them are firing on all cylinders in this movie, and just creating this dark, twisted, you know, just competition between these 2 guys. And there's some great twists, and there's some great turns, and there's some tragic moments in this movie. It's like, oh, and there's great reveals. I really enjoyed the Prestige, and I think at the time I didn't appreciate it enough. And I was like, oh, it was a good movie. That was a good movie. I liked it. Not as good as some of those other films, but I liked it. But I think over time, like, this is really good. This is really good, and it's very clever. I know it's like based off of a book. I never read it, but I liked it a lot. Excellent adaptation. And moving on from the Prestige, now we're getting the top 3, baby, top 3. And some of these are not going to surprise you. I think these are still to this day, for me personally, his best movies. And we got to start with Batman Begins. Batman Begins, chat. And so again, this is again, you guys know the story. This is, you know, after witnessing his parents' death, you know, Bruce Wayne, you know, he learns the art of fighting and detective work to, you know, confront injustice in Gotham City for decades. And when he finally returns to Gotham, he becomes the Batman, and he has to stop a secret society, the League of Shadows, along with the Scarecrow and other criminal elements of Gotham who wish to destroy the city. And you got to remember, Batman Begins, I think Batman Begins is a very important film, both for the comic book genre, but also specifically for Batman. Because before this movie, even though we had some great Batman adaptations at the time, like Batman, you know, Justice League was going on and all that, and Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, all those people were killing it, right, on the television. But theatrically, Batman was in a really bad place. Because we had the Schumacher years forever, certainly Batman and Robin, you know, which at the time, you know, people saying one of the worst films of all time, one of the worst superhero adaptations ever. And there was a struggle at Warner Brothers to, like, make another Batman movie. There's so many scripts out there, so many different ideas that you can look at, chat, and that they passed on. They were trying to rework, but they settled with Christopher Nolan, and he brought a sense of grittiness, certainly reality. His mission, I think, for this movie, and certainly carried on into Dark Knight, he wanted to bring, I think, a lot of humanity to Batman. He just didn't want to be like, it's all about the suits. Like, let's explore the character of Bruce Wayne and, like, why he's doing, like, what he's doing. And the fact that he just grounded so much, he made it a more personal story. And so I didn't mind that they went ahead and they retread the origin. I think of all the Batman films, this is the best in terms of how it handles Bruce Wayne and Batman's origin. I thought that was great. They gave that time to breathe. Like, because you remember the original Burton film, it's like iconic for the pearls and stuff, but it's like, that was it, you know. But here it's like we get to see Bruce's interactions with his parents, and we feel that pain, and we see his journey. Well, long before he becomes Batman, he becomes a vagabond, he becomes a hobo, you know. And I thought it was very clever to incorporate into his origin, like, his master, the person that trained him, was Ra's al Ghul, you know, played by Liam Neeson, who does a great job. I never would have thought, Chad. And again, as a kid, going into this movie, I didn't know Ra's al Ghul was in it. I know, and of course, they trick you because they think, oh, it's Ken Watanabe who's Ra's al Ghul. It's like, oh, they killed him. But it's like, oh, you're Ra's al Ghul. I would have never said, like, however old I was when I saw this movie, I was like, they are never going to use Ra's al Ghul. Ever. And he's literally the first villain, along with Scarecrow, that they use in this movie. And Cillian Murphy. And that started the relationship between Christopher Nolan and Cillian Murphy. Long collaboration. And he makes a great Scarecrow. And the supporting cast is amazing. I mean, Christian Bale, I think, is a great Bruce Wayne. He's a good Batman. I think the voice gets worse later on. We can talk about that later on. But, Love, just like everyone else in the movie, it's such a great superhero origin story. And again, I think it's like a template. This is like how you do an origin story. And I know obviously his other Batman film gets a lot of credit, but this reestablished the brand, just reinvigorated and made people interested in his future Batman movie, his other Batman movie, right? But yeah, love Batman Begins. Love Batman Begins. Highly recommend. If you've never seen it, check this out. And then we get number 2, Chad, number 2. And this, I struggled with these top 2. I really, really struggled with this. But number 2 for me is Memento. Memento, which again, for people that don't know, it focuses on a man with short-term memory, played by Guy Pearce, who attempts to track down his wife's murderer. This film, I like, because this really, I mean, we already kind of do it in following, but this movie really establishes like Nolan's obsession with time, because this movie is told linearly. And I like how it's almost told like in a backwards way, and just the whole concept. Like, it's such an interesting plot device where this guy, because of his short-term memory loss, he literally forgets like all these details. And so his solution to that, to remind himself, is to literally tattoo all the clues that he's figured out over a period of time, like on his body. It's so bizarre, but it's just so interesting and just weird. And like, yeah, I mean, of course, Guy Pearce, I think that might be like my favorite Guy Pearce performance ever. Carrie-Anne Moss, I think, is great in the movie. Joe Pantoliano, who plays a very interesting diabolical character in the film. Again, this also establishes Nolan's love for like, really good, twists. And this movie, I think, has, if I were to rank in terms of like some of my favorite twists of all time, this is easily top 3. It's so good. And again, this movie is so inexpensive. It shows like you don't need that amazing spectacle. You don't need those $100 million budgets to captivate an audience's attention, to make them feel like they just saw the greatest spectacle of all time, because the spectacle is in the storytelling. The spectacle is in the characters and what Nolan does with them, and the shocking things he does with them in this movie. I feel like this movie and one other film are some of the best movies of the 21st century. It's when I think of Nolan, I think of this movie and one other one, where it's just like this is the type of film that I think inspires people to be screenwriters. It's kind of a movie that inspires people to be filmmakers because of how smart it is, because of how well acted it is, because of the shocking twist, which I think is just brilliant. Right? I absolutely love Memento. It's great. And again, I was going back and forth between this film and one other one. It's like, is this my number 1? Is this my number 2? And I said, it's like, this is my number 2. But, both these movies are head and shoulders right next to each other and are equally amazing and great. But, my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and I don't think this comes as a surprise to everyone, is indeed The Dark Knight. Which, again, for those that don't know, The Dark Knight focuses on this new villain who was plaguing Gotham City, known only as the Joker. And as he's wreaking havoc and chaos and murdering countless people, Batman needs to up his game and accept that, he is not prepared to face the greatest psychological and physical test of his early crime fighting career, while also trying to protect his friends, his allies, and his loved ones against his ultimate enemy. I remember, I think everyone was excited after Batman Begins. I remember watching Batman Begins, and because I saw the movie 2 or 3 times in the theater, because I love Batman Begins a lot. People forget that was not a huge commercial success. It did okay, it did well, but because of the because of, the fact it paid for the sins of previous installments, it wasn't like, above and beyond like a huge commercial set. Critically, it did very well. But that ending with like the conversation between Commissioner Gordon, or I guess in that case, Lieutenant Gordon and Batman, talking about escalation. It's like, we start carrying semi-automatics, they start carrying automatics. We buy Kevlar, they start buying armor-piercing rounds. And Batman's like, and he's like, and you're wearing a mask. What's going to happen with that? What's going to be the answer to you? And that reveal with, there's this guy, and he has a taste of theatrics like you, and he leaves a calling card, and you see that Joker card, and it's like, whew. My whole audience was just so excited because, we were all loving the movie, of course, and my friends at the time, and we're like, oh, the Joker, he's going to introduce the Joker, and like in this world. And then, of course, in 2007, it was before the movie came out, obviously, and they were casting or whatever. And I remember when Heath Ledger was cast, and people were going, that guy, and there was sadly disgusting homophobia thrown at him because you the guy from Brokeback Mountain, the gay cowboy. He's like, yeah, that great movie, yeah, that great movie. And I'd seen Brokeback Mountain at the time, and I really enjoyed it. And I'd seen it like Knight's Tale. I like Heath Ledger quite a bit, and I was like, let's just wait to see the movie. And I remember when they start putting out those first images of him in the makeup, I was like, oh, this is going to be a very dark take on the Joker. I mean, you think you can argue one of the most, not just one of the most iconic villains in comics, but one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time. And then, he had the tragic passing of Heath Ledger, of course, which I think that just built up the mystique of the film even more. But when we started seeing those trailers, and I was like, wow. I remember obsessively watching those trailers over and over and over again. And just like the makeup and the design, everything, the voice, and, just being so scary. And then, of course, I saw the movie. And The Dark Knight for me, Chad, is one of the greatest theatrical experiences I've ever had in my entire life. When I first saw that film, every seat in the theater was taken. Every single seat. There was not a single empty seat in that theater. Like it was sold out. I remember being there with my friend. I remember even like people. I remember the people that work at the theater were like in the hallway just watching the movie, right? And we were all captivated. Like from that opening scene with the heist and the robbery and feeling like Michael Mann movie like Thief or Heat, right? All that felt so cool. And then, I mean, they use Batman in the movie is great, and of course you got Two-Face and everything. That's really cool, and you got Morgan Freeman, Lucius Fox, and he's got more to do. And Michael Caine's wonderful, like so many great. But that performance, that Joker, he is a tornado, he is a hurricane, he is pure chaos. And there was just so many scenes. There was several scenes like. Yeah, you have his initial introduction in the robbery, right? But then later on, like when he's talking to all those other gangsters, he's like, ha, ha, he, ho, ha. And I thought my jokes were bad. Like all of that. And it's like, and then despite being so scary, intimidating, he just has this, like, he's still funny, which is weird. Like you have, what's his name? Michael J. White, who is just like, how about if I have my boy here pull your head off? And he's like, you want to see a magic trick? And like I didn't expect that. No one expected that because that was not in the trailers at all. And he puts the pencil down. I'm going to make this pencil disappear. And then he grabs it, fucking ta-da! And it was like there was a visceral reaction in the audience when that happened. And everyone was like, Jesus! And then and everyone's like, holy shit! And he goes on and does his whole monologue, and he's like, that guy's a squealer, and everything. And then like how that scene wraps up, where he's like, let's not blow this out of proportion. He's like, but go blow everybody up. And he's like, you think you could just do this and walk away, guys? Yeah, all that. But the scene that to this day that I just remember. People were going like, fuck yeah! People were so excited in that moment. But the moment where no one said anything. It was the moment where they get the videotape, and it's broadcast across Gotham, and it's Christian Bale, Michael Caine reacting to Heath Ledger's performance. And it's that when he's talking to the fake Batman, because Batman has inspired all these schlubby people to be Batman now. And he's like, he's slapping the hell out of this guy. He's like, tell them your name. He's like, Brian. He's crying. You just hear him like the camera. And he's like, are you the real Batman? And he's like, no. He's like, no. Why are you dressed up like him? And all that was like people going like kind of like there was like a nervous laughter like during that. But then when he's like saying, "Look at me," and then his voice, the fact that came out of Heath Ledger to this day, I'm like, oh my God, that look at me, like just demonic. And then it just turns around. He has the camera looking at himself, and he's just going, "This is what happens, when how crazy Batman's made Gotham," like all of that. And I was like, "Gee," and after that sequence ending, he starts laughing and he fucking murders that guy. No one said anything. There was no like, woo. You could hear a pin drop. That's how quiet it was. And I was like, this is something special. At the time, this is something special. And of course, the movie played out, and we get so many great scenes and sequences between Batman, Joker, the interrogation room scene. I love how they handle Two-Face and Aaron Eckhart. I actually wanted more. This film definitely has like 3 endings. And I think they're all great. And it has a dark, dour ending where the Joker won. The Joker wins at the end of the movie. And Batman's like, I have to be the Dark. He's going to be the Dark Knight. He has to take on that responsibility. He'll be blamed for all these horrible things, because he has to, because we have to tell this lie in order to preserve peace and sanity in the city. It's a very bold choice. And it's one of the most, it is that and Iron Man. But the Dark Knight, I would rank the Dark Knight better than Iron Man personally. But it's one of the most important films, if not the most important film for the comic book genre. It gave, not to say that there weren't great comic films before that, of course there were, but it almost gave it a certain respectability. And so like, this is what you can do with these characters in this genre. And it changed things. It had a huge impact on things. And I have so much respect for it. And Nolan being so respectful of these characters, and I felt the love coming through, the terrifying love, and it's I think it's one of the greatest villainous performances ever from an actor, certainly of the past 20+ years. Loved it. I love The Dark Knight. Yeah, I can put any of the top 6 movies really from Insomnia up to The Dark Knight. I can put any of these movies on and enjoy them. The Dark Knight, I saw this 5 times. I saw it 5 times in the theater. That's how much I loved it. And I think the last time I saw it in IMAX, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Love it for that. And so clearly that inspired Nolan's love for IMAX cameras, which he has used quite often since that time, which I do like IMAX. I don't like 3D and all that bullshit. It's like IMAX is the way to go. But yeah, chap, those are my ranking of Christopher Nolan's movies. Again, starting with the top, following Tenet, Dunkirk, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Oppenheimer, Insomnia, Inception, The Prestige, Batman Begins, Memento, ending with The Dark Knight, which is my personal favorite Christopher Nolan movie. What about you guys out there? How would you rank your Christopher Nolan films? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with my list? What's your favorite? Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.